What's going on, coaches? Welcome back to the Fourth and Goal Vodcast. Today we'll have Coach Tappa on with us. Coach Tappa will be talking about his no-huddle system and how he easily communicates with his players to play at a fast tempo. Welcome, Coach. Thanks for jumping on and giving us your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Now, for our people watching at home, what's your background and how did you get to where you are now and in your football journey and career?
Well, I started coaching youth football about 8 years ago when my oldest son started. And here in our community, I live in a small rural town in central Wisconsin. And in our community, we started tackle football in third grade. So when he was 8 years old, third grader, he signed up for football, and I've been gung ho about coaching him since he was born because my dad coached me in baseball, basketball, everything I did when I was a kid, and I was ready to go, and I knew nothing about coaching football. My high school experience is pretty limited. I hadn't really paid much attention. Big fan of the game for sure, but I didn't know how to coach it at all. But I was fortunate to hook up that first year with a couple of veteran coaches, a couple of guys who'd been doing it 8, 10 years and really knew what they were doing, and just learned a lot from them. And it was a really positive experience, had a really good time, and have gradually gone from there. So I coached my older son for 4 years. He moved on and played middle school. He's now going to be a junior in high school, plays for a very successful program that we have. They won state 2 years ago. The poster right over my left-hand shoulder is them at Camp Randall Stadium in Madison after winning the state championship in 2018. We've got a great history here and a great football lineage in our little town. It's a town of about 1,300 people, but we've got guys coaching college ball at Iowa and North Dakota State and South Dakota and all over the place. We've got a couple of NFL players, kind of crazy. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's a little bit more about our town. So my older son went through, and the entire time I was just kind of an assistant, helping out, coaching a position. I coached offensive line, coached defensive line because that's what he played.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have a second son who came through for 4 years right after that. And during that time, just the makeup of the coaches that I was with lent itself to me taking a larger leadership role in coaching the offense. And had a lot of thoughts. I've been doing a lot of studying of that over the years and trying to take the concepts that I really admired from the college game especially, but some of the high school game, and applying that to 10 and 11-year-old kids. And it's been a fun challenge, and I love it. And it's something that it's a hobby of mine. It's just something I really enjoy learning about. But that's my coaching journey. Aside from that, just briefly,
Mm-hmm.
during those years, I also took on a leadership position within our local organization and ended up becoming the president of our local organization. So dealt with everything from equipment to paying referees to fundraising to things like that. And then I also was the president of our conference for a couple of years too. So
Oh,
that involved making schedules. We added a couple of communities to our conference during that time, held larger scale discussions about the future of tackle football with youth.
yep.
Some people are going rookie tackle or padded flag or tackle bar, things like that. And it's just a great discussion amongst a bunch of people who really love the game and love what it means for kids. So this is really my first year now, though, that in eight that I won't be a part of the youth game. I'm
Mm-hmm.
still involved, somewhat in our local organization, trying to ease the transition, whatever that might be. That's very much up in the air as we record this in the middle of June,
Yep.
as you know, with the health conditions going on right now. But I'm hoping to coach at our junior high or middle school level, and eventually the high school level here in town too. So I want to stick with it. It's a lot of fun. You're always learning. I love the camaraderie with the other coaches. I love
Mm-hmm.
the camaraderie with the kids and the relationships you build. I love the camaraderie with other coaches. I love everything about it. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, love coaching football. Very much focused on the youth level.
Yep, absolutely. It's the football as a whole. It sort of brings people together and you form sort of relationships that really last a long time.
Well, and it's the kind of thing where my younger son especially has a sick brain like I do, and that he remembers everything sports related, right? I mean, he remembers his older brother's games from when my younger boy was like 6. He's like, oh yeah, that was that time that we played, that Will's team played Wittenberg, and that kid got a late hit penalty on Parker, something like that, and those are the things I remember from when I was that age.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun. It's good. We just go and we play catch in the backyard and talk about that stuff for hours. And I think we will when when they have kids. And it's anyway. Don't need to belabor that, yeah, sports are great, and especially football.
Yes, absolutely. So you're mentioning how you've dealt extensively in the youth game. What are some of the challenges, I guess you'd say, about adopting and adapting some of the things we see on a Saturday in college to that younger age group?
Sure. I would say that the biggest one, it's a challenge, but it's a challenge for the right reason, is that everyone plays, right? We don't just pick the 11 best players on each side of the ball and just play them exclusively. We play everyone. And there's rules even governing that, which I think is appropriate. But ultimately, that means that we have some weaker players playing in certain spots, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to do your best to put them in positions where they are going to add some value or not have their limitations exposed. And you know how it is with football. I mean, it's an 11-man game, and if any person doesn't do their job, it can have catastrophic effects on the play. So I would say the biggest challenge is trying to figure out that mix of of how you play your kids in certain spots. Other than that, I mean, the thing that people will bring up a lot more is size, speed, arm strength, catching ability, all that stuff. It's not really that much of a challenge. It's just that's who they are, right? I mean, it's not a challenge. It's just we're not going to be able to throw the ball 40 yards in the air, right? Or we're not going to be able to pass protect for 5 seconds or 3 seconds even. I mean, we're going to be pretty limited that way. So what do? You shorten up the routes. You roll kids out more or less. You don't have them stand back in the pocket. You do a lot of things like that. So it's really not that much of a challenge. And it's also made easier by the fact that our league, in addition to I think most leagues, we have to play a certain style of defense too, which is, there's safety reasons for that. We have weight restrictions, and we want the bigger kids to be matched up against bigger kids. So if you know you're going against a 5-man front every play, more or less, it makes it easier to scheme for that too. So there are challenges there, but they're limited. And I guess the other challenge then would be the lack of practice time, right? So, I mean, football requires so much practice and memorization. I don't know how to say it, but, work beforehand to get everything down correctly. And when we're practicing for, 2.5, 3 hours a week after school starts, that's limited. And that's okay, right? I'm not suggesting that we need to be practicing 10 hours a week with these 9-year-old kids, but you need to keep things fairly simple then, right? So we're fairly basic in what we do. And I've seen people do stuff that's a lot more complicated than what we do, and God bless them, if they have the time and the kids to do that, that's great. But I would say maybe that's the other challenge. But again, all of these challenges are, there's very good reasons that they're in place. So I'm not arguing with them.
No, absolutely. It's one of the things that down here in Australia we face as well, and it's certainly the same across the globe. Outside of America, is that practice time is so limited because we're not with a high school, we're not affiliated with a high school, and our sports are more club-based, league-based. We will only get 2 practices a week, and they may be for 2 hours each. So you've got 4 hours of practice. So we're dealing with some limited practice time as well. So it's kind of a reason why we find a lot of people look to the lower levels like your middle school and your youth football to get those core concepts, because we're dealing with the same time restrictions.
Yeah. And I tell you what, though, those constraints, right? Those challenges have really forced us to be more structured, more organized, more efficient with how we do it. And I'll touch on that a little bit more when we talk about the topic that going to talk about tonight. But you really need to maximize that time. I mean, especially when you consider that youth football players, if you're doing it the right way, they're playing both offense and defense, right? You don't want to have kids specializing on one side of the ball at that age. I mean, they should be experiencing as many different positions as possible. So you got to get through a lot, but then again, if you do it right, and if you take the time to think about it and plan it out and then stick with it, you can get that done, right? And you can get everything you need to get done in an hour and a half, 2 hours. And that's better for the kids because then their attention doesn't wander. They don't start picking grass. It limits the amount of times they ask you what time it is or how much time they have left. And those are the things that suck your soul when you're a coach. But you can limit that, right, if you do your job up front. I took a look at it one day when I was I've written a few books on youth football, and one of them I just sat down and I tried to figure out how many hours we actually practiced last year. And in the preceding year, we had played games. We had played 6 games, which took about an hour and a half. So we'd played games for about 9 hours, and we'd practiced for about 70 hours. And that was, I mean, I knew inherently that we practiced a lot more than we played, but I didn't realize it was that lopsided. So it really drives home just how much of the experience and the time that you spend with these kids and what they're going to get out of football is from practice. So you really got to do a good job of managing that time you spend together.
Yes, absolutely. It's even in the older levels, the hours of practice and meeting time and trainings to the games. It's one of those unique sports where it's so much of your time and effort and energy is done before game day, and like game day is your reward. So, I think that sort of is flowing into what is your coaching philosophy in terms of both broadly at like a program or a team level, and then more specifically into your offense and offensively what your philosophy is.
Yeah, sure. I mean, broadly at a program level or a team level, I'm not going to lie. We want to be successful, but we want our kids to be successful in the right way, right? We don't want to just feed the stud kid the ball 50 times a game and let them run over kids. We want our kids to be successful by having them all contribute to success, right? And have fun doing it. So, and this kind of gets into the offensive philosophy in terms of we try to go fast, okay, and then I'll show you some numbers that we think back that up, and we try to spread the ball around a lot. And I forgot to pull up the numbers beforehand, but we try to get anywhere from 10 to 12 kids score every year on our team of about 20 to 25 kids, somewhere in there. Okay. We try to get as many kids as possible double-digit touches, whether that be carries or receptions. We try to get as many kids starting at least on offense or defense and playing key positions. And I track statistics. I mean, because I'm a nerd. I mean, I'm a big time dork, and there's nothing. I love sitting down on Sunday morning with my coffee. So basically, after a game, I've got like the Premier League on or the Bundesliga on, and I'm watching football and I'm drinking coffee and charting plays, and I love that because I think it helps show how many different kids you are actually getting involved, right? I mean, in tackles and carries and receptions and scoring and things like that. So it's kind of a long-winded, vague answer, but I really would like as many kids to have a moment that they can come back to as being, hey, this was my successful moment on the field, right? Or if not many more than that. And I think that you can do that for just about every kid, no matter how limited or they might be or how new they might be, because those are the things that are going to keep them coming back, right? And that's when you're coaching at our level, you want them to enjoy themselves while they're there, but you also want them to keep playing through high school, and that's a whole other discussion that we have every year in terms of why certain kids do or don't stick with it. But we try to do what we can to make it a positive experience for them. So, yeah.
Awesome. I guess we'll talk more about that offensive philosophy and some of the things that you do to get the players the ball and
Sure.
really spread it around and ensure that they're having fun and keep moving and everything.
Yeah, and like we said before we started recording, I think I know a lot about X's and O's, but what I've actually put into practice is fairly simple compared to I think what a lot of your viewers and your listeners would know about. So I don't want to bore them with that unless they're all youth coaches, and but we could do a separate one on that. Well, what I would think would be applicable is just describing some of the thought process and the implementation of our no-huddle offense. All right, cool. So this is the fancy title slide I put together for our playbook last year, and I just carried it over to this. And this here is my son, Charlie. He's going to be in 7th grade this year. He's awesome. And, you see him, this is him playing, just as one example, right? He was playing our H position last year, which is kind of like an H-back. But he also played our F position. No, he's playing our F position in this picture. He was also playing halfback. He also played quarterback. He also played right tackle. That's just on offense, right? So that's one kid, and that's indicative of what we try to do with our guys. So just a little bit about our offensive principles here. The couple things, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the one thing that I really do want to point out here that I don't think that I don't think everybody does is we use as wide a line splits as possible. I mean, we use fingertip to fingertip splits. And the main reason we do that is because the last few years we have been really undersized. I mean, there have been games where we've gone in and been outweighed by 30 pounds per player. And I don't know what that is in metric. You can do the you can do the conversion after this, but it's a lot, right? So I mean, we're giving up a lot of weight. Now, my older son, his teams, they were big, so we could just line up and pound them in really traditional basic stuff. But we've had to get more creative, and by spreading out, we've really been able to create better running lanes for our players and not ask our undersized linemen to have to hold up where they had a disadvantage size-wise. Here's a couple other things you can see that we touched on earlier. I try to get more than 40 offensive plays per game. And just for a frame of reference, that's 8-minute quarters, so they're 32-minute games. And not to brag about it, but a lot of the times we end up with running clock because of how well our offense is playing. And we've also had very good defenses. I don't have a lot to do with that personally. I run the scout team, which is my biggest pleasure in life. I'm definitely a scout team All-American quarterback, but anyway, we've had some successful teams, and the games have gone quickly, and still we've been able to get more than 40 plays in. Talking about no huddle, distribution of the carries and passes targets, we're almost always in the shotgun, and we've been stubborn about that too. We struggled at times this past year, especially with the snap. We just couldn't find, our best center options were probably kids who were playing hands positions, ball carrying positions, and we just couldn't afford that. But we stuck with it, and it worked for us. And then passing at least 20% of the time, and that might not seem like much for teams at a higher level, but geez, for youth, that's a lot. We passed 30 to 35% of the time these last couple of years. And I'm not talking, 4 verts or anything like that. I mean, we're talking little 5-yard option routes and bubble screens and things like that. But still, we had a new team come in the league this year, and after we threw we threw 28 times against him, I think, and he's like, in our last league, I think we saw maybe 5 passes a game, and I think that's fun personally, just because it's different, and the kids, again, it's another way to get a lot of kids to go. So. Those are some of the things we do on offense. Now, what I really wanted to talk about it with you, I guess, was the no-huddle offense. And about 10 years ago is when Chip Kelly and Gus Malzahn started really making waves with Oregon and Auburn. And I just was fascinated watching them play. Chip, I'm a big Wisconsin fan, Wisconsin Badgers. And Oregon beat Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl following the 2011 season. It was the last year before Mariota was their quarterback. But just insane what kind of speed they played at. And I was just really taken by that. Didn't really know how to apply it anywhere, right? I wasn't even coaching yet at that time, but after coaching for a year or so at the youth level, and this is my older son's teams. We had a really smart quarterback who was very smart, very athletic. We had a bunch of pretty sharp kids who formed the core of our team, and I thought, we could probably run a no huddle where we just ran the same play over and over again until somebody gave a call to run the counter to that, right? So if we're running 26 lead 3 times and we got them on the ropes and then we call kill or something like that, we run a bootleg out of it. I mean, I'm pretty sure it would work, right? And I got pretty excited about that, and then I got vetoed by our head coach, who thought that that was probably I don't know. He didn't think that was the right way of going about it, basically,
Yep.
and I agreed and I supported that. He's the head coach and it was his decision, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but about the same time, I started noticing our high school program was using it, and our coach is really smart guy. I mean, he's been very good at adapting to the trends of the game, right? So you mean back 25 years ago, he had a bunch of big farm boys coming through here, and again, we just kind of lined up and ran over people. But over time, he realized that he had to get just more sophisticated. And one of those things was implementing the no huddle. Now he wasn't like operating at lightning speed all the time, right? But by staying in no huddle and staying in the same personnel packages, it really limited what the defenses could do and help him get into the right play, right? All those things that we hear are reasons that people run the no huddle. So again, I kind of kept that on the back burner and finally 2 years ago was able to implement that with the full backing of our coach.
Mm-hmm.
So just a few numbers to share for this, because again, I track these a lot. In the 5 seasons leading up to our first no huddle season, we averaged about 35 plays a game, right? So highs of 38 one year, a low of 31 one year, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first season where we went no huddle, we averaged 43 plays per game, and we got to 57 twice. Which, I mean, I was just over the moon with that. I mean, because again, you just get so many more opportunities to play football, right? When you're averaging more plays, just kids can play football more. So that was the first season, 43 plays per game. Last season, 41, and we hit 55 twice. Part of the reason is because we played 2 playoff games last year, so we played more games against tougher teams. And plus, if I know you probably haven't ever been to Wisconsin, but by mid-October it was snowing here, and that just kind of gummed everything up. But at the end of the day, just you can look at the math however you want, but basically we're averaging 8 to 10 more plays a game. And over a 6-game season, which is what we played, that was 50 or 60 additional plays. And again, going back to that first philosophy of trying to get kids touches and experience in different spots, that really allowed us to do more of that. So it really saw it pay off. Didn't really know exactly how to implement it to start off, but the first year we did, it was kind of great. So it was August 1st, really nice summer day here in Wisconsin, and about an hour and a half into our first practice, thunderstorm, right? So we have to go into the gym because it's lightning, and it was the perfect time, though, to just, we weren't sure exactly when we were going to implement this, but we thought, we might as well do this. It's day one. So we gave them the wristbands. We explained to them what was on it, what they were looking at. We explained to them what the communication system was going to be. We tested them on it, just made calls and called on kids and asked them to tell us what the play was, and they got it immediately. I mean, there was really never any hiccups with that, and we've been blessed. We've had some really good kids here that really have gotten it, and maybe the ones who didn't get it were faking it until they made it, but it was really good. I mean, I saw no evidence that they weren't getting it, right? So I record video of just about everything related to do with sports because I really enjoy going back and watching it, and again, I'm a nerd, right? And nobody should be doing it this much at the youth level, but I'd record practices too, right? And just put a camera on a tripod behind our offense while we were running. And we started, as we were doing the install of the offense, not really huddling, but kind of, sugar huddle, half huddle or something like that, where we
Mm-hmm.
call the play and go to the line. And we were running a play every 60 seconds, and that seemed from experience to be what we had always done, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
was a really normal pace for us. But when we really committed, then we thought, you know what, if we're going to do this in a game, we better practice it like this too.
Yep.
We want to play every 30 seconds, which it doesn't sound hyper fast or anything like that, but when you're talking about kids and coaching on the fly, it was a big adjustment for some of our coaches who had been at it for a while. They were used to, we run a play, it stops, we make corrections on three kids and what they did wrong, what they need to fix. I'm like, guys, we can't do that. You gotta coach them while they're running back to the line and getting information. And if you need to talk to them more, we'll talk at a water break, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it wasn't just the kids; it was some of the guys who've been coaching for a while. And I'm just sitting here calling plays and yelling, go, 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 and getting people going. And the reason why is because of that 30 seconds versus 60 seconds. Because here again, here's some math on this third bullet point. If you're talking 25 practices and you're running 20 minutes of team offense, which we probably went well more than 20 offense a lot of the time.
Yep.
But again, do the math, right? It's a difference of 1,000 plays in practice versus 500, right? So what are you going to get out of that? You're going to get better if you're doing it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Your kids are going to get better at it because they're
Yep.
repping it more, and more kids are going to get practice reps too. So then when they do get that game time, they are more likely to experience success. You're not just throwing a kid in there because you're going fast in the game. They've done it on Tuesday. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't emphasize that enough. And the last thing is this bullet point is a big thing of mine too. And I didn't make this reason up. There's been lots of people who use this as justification for no huddle. But if you're practicing at that tempo during the season, you don't have to spend 10 minutes running the 6-second drill at the end of the practice, right?
Yep.
And your kids aren't dreading it, and the kids aren't going 75% during team offense because they've got to save their energy for gassers at the end, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we got our conditioning last year playing football, and rather than just running. And I thought that was great. We never had problems with our kids being out of shape or not properly conditioned as we went on. So big time practice benefits with running no huddle too. Let me take a drink, bud. All right.
Mm.
All right. So the communication system, and you know what? I'm going to actually go ahead one slide here. We use a wristband, and for kids, I want to say it was 2.5 by 3.25, or the fractions may have been off on that, but the high school kids were ones that are a lot bigger. I know my son, again, we kind of copied this template, and his are a lot bigger. They can fit a lot more plays. But the 2.5 by 3.25 ones were about what inches are about what we arrived at here. And after playing around in Excel, right, we
Mm-hmm.
came up with this template. And these plays are nonsense. Honestly, this is just something I made up for the book that we did. But what it ended up being, I think this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11 colors, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and 3 columns. All right, 1, 2, 3. And then there's like a zone here at the bottom of this that you can add some other instructions, right? So we had instructions on like a freeze call, or if you're going to go on 2, or some other instructions like that. But the meat of this is in here, right? And a couple things. First of all, I really like the fact that this limited us to 33 plays, because there's no way we were ever going to run 33 distinct plays in a game, in a youth football game. I mean, we probably ended up running 10 to 12, and that would be appropriate. But this really forced us, if we ever came up with something new or a tweak or a different play name, we had to remove something, right? And this was a really good constraint on me as the guy running the offense to not, every time you put something in, you take something out. And
Yep.
this wristband really helped do that. Okay, so you've seen that. Actually, I'll just go back to this. So the play calling that we use was basically, I'd call the formation first, okay? And we figured there's really no point in disguising the formation call that you're going to make, because they're going to see you anyway, right? I mean, it's not like it's a secret that if we've got twins left or whatever the defense would call it, they're going to see it when we line up, right? So we had a couple different names. We only ran out of a handful of formations that were all very similar, and they basically revolved around the slot receiver, shifting slot sides, and the guy who's the F, or we call it a flex, but he's kind of like an H-back sniffer type of position, which side he was on. So I mean, but we were pretty basic in how we did things. So we call it the formation, and then we call it a color, right? So orange, right? And then we call out a series of numbers, and let's say the signifier was going to be the first number in the chain, and I said orange 164, that's strong left 27 stretch.
Right.
Okay, that worked well, and we never deviated from that. And not to sound like there's espionage involved or anything like this, but our opponents never seemed to pick up on the patterns. But if they did, it would be easy enough to change it, right? I mean, you could always say the third number. So if I said, orange 1, 2, 3, then it's strong left mesh or whatever, right? So I've seen other teams do this just going to high school games and junior high games where they'll call this out differently, but this worked for us, and we stuck with it. So so that's the play calling mechanism with that. There would be times then too where we'd sneak in like a freeze call somewhere on here. We tried to do it a little bit because some of the teams were better coached and that we played and really picked up on some of these things, and we tried to keep them on their toes. But pretty simple. And like I said, these kids who were 5th and 6th graders, so 10, 11, 12 years old, picked up on it right from the start and never had an issue with it. The one thing, though, that I would caution, if caution's even the right word, before we implemented this, I talked with one of our high school coaches about this play calling system. He said, you know what, before you do, make sure you don't have any colorblind kids on your team. Because one year we did this and we were calling, red 672 and our kid playing right guard, doing the wrong thing, running the wrong play. And we were yelling at him. And at some point, it's like, Coach, I don't know what play it is. I can't see red. Or I don't know exactly which color it was. But the point was his color blindness limited what he could do with this system. So if it comes to that, you've got to do something different. Here's a little bit more about the wristband. I did it in Excel. I've since started doing just about everything in Google Sheets. I tell you what, Josh, I'll put a link to this template that I have on Google Docs. I'll give you a link in the chat or text it to you afterwards, and you can put it in the description of this. That's something that a lot of people end up asking for. I do have a separate video talking about the wristband, and hopefully that's a good tool for you. If you do use different size wristbands, and I just checked in our equipment shed this afternoon, I bought some backups that were actually a slightly different size, so we would have had to adjust for that. But I don't have a color printer. Thankfully, our head coach did, and he print them off every week. I know. These are the things that you don't think about before you start this. It's 3 days before practice. Oh my God, who has a color printer? I hope Jeff does, and he did, right? But it worked out well, and we never had an issue. He'd cut them up, and on Monday or Tuesday, whenever our first practice was, we'd take out the old ones, throw them away, and put the new ones in every week. And some weeks we didn't change plays at all, and those are my favorite ones because again, that's when we knew it was going good, and we didn't have to do some new stuff. The last 3 bullet points here, I just want to touch on quickly. I know that some wristband calling systems that coaches have done have position-specific instructions on it. So rather than, orange or green 1 being strong right 27 boot, let's say the guard is wearing one where green 1 would be block middle linebacker, something like that. It's just a really specific instruction. We did that the first year for some of our guards because they were having trouble picking up on it. So we made wristbands specific for our left and our right guard, but we've never done that and we didn't do it at all last year, and we didn't do it for any other position. And the big reason is because we play our kids at so many different positions that we don't want to have them to have to change wristbands so often. And for the most part, they've done a good job of picking up plays. Make sure you collect them all at the end of practice. I mean, that's for our kids. And even then, one or two a week would disappear, get lost in a duffel bag or something like that. And I'd get it back 3 weeks later. But we had enough, and we never ran short. And you'll need to wash them at some point. But ours never got that bad. So can't recommend the wristband enough. Now, having said that, we didn't go at lightning speed, right? I'm not trying to suggest that we were running a play every 10 seconds or something like that, right? But we could run about as fast as we were allowed to by the referees, and the referees. And again, I'm not complaining or criticizing at all, but the referees would give the defense time to get set, and it's kids football, and that's how it should be. But we were going about as fast as we could, and our kids got used to the play's over. And as our guy is handing the ball to the referee, I'm already yelling out the formation, and our guys are getting to place. They know that they're looking over right away, and they're getting there, and that they got really good at that. So couldn't say enough about the job our kids did with that. So the last thoughts I had on this, we didn't just play fast. We also scored a lot too. I mean, I'm not. It'd be one thing if you just went really fast and went 3 or 4 and out every time, but we didn't. I mean, we were the highest scoring team in our division, and we didn't punt last year. So I mean, it worked, and a lot of that's we had some really fast kids and some really talented kids. So I mean, it's we could have done a lot of different things and been successful with the kids that we had, but it is effective too. You marry the no huddle with some good concepts, and it goes well. The second thing is you really have to commit to it. You can't just play around with it. I guess you could say that if you have like a no huddle or a 2-minute offense type of thing that you practice, you're already sort of doing it, right? But to me, we had to commit to it, so the kids just knew that this is how we were going to go, and they knew this is how they're going to give the ball to the rest. They knew that this is how quickly we were going to do it. They knew that this was when we'd substitute. That there were certain instances when we'd gone bam, 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 bam. Well, this is when we sub, right? But you have to commit to it, all right? We did huddle at times in practice. Usually it was coming out of a water break. Okay, I'd be setting up we'd probably go like 2 to 4 sessions of team offense that would last, 7 to 9 minutes or 7 to 10 minutes. And coming out of that, we would huddle every time, right? Just so the kids were used to a huddle in case we ever needed to. But we didn't, right? So, I mean, if we ever needed to slow it down, I'd tell them we were slowing it down. Again, it was no secret. And the kids would just stand there until I called the play in, and they'd all look at their wristband, and then we'd do it. So, I mean, it really, we never needed to huddle. But I just made a point of doing it a few times because they probably will at some point in their football future. Make sure every offensive player checks their wristband before every play. There was a time last year where I just happened to look at our left tackle, and I knew he wasn't looking at it. And we called a play where it was a read, and he was supposed to leave the guy head up on him unblocked and go get a second level defender, and he just blocked the guy in front. Brody, you've got to read the play. I mean, you were the key guy on that play, and you do your assignment. I know you're a lineman, right? And you might think that your job is repetitive and boring, but you're really important here. You've got to know what the play is every bit as much as our quarterback does. So make sure they check their plays and hold them accountable for that. And then the last thing, at some point, our kids on scout defense knew what plays were coming. We didn't change it up that much. And it was still kind of funny to see some of them jump offside when on our freeze call. But it got frustrating at times. But on the other hand, if you look at it a different way, you could say, well, since they know what's coming, right? Like our scout defense is probably going to be less talented than our starting offense, right? So to make up for that talent gap and really challenge the offense more, if half of them know what play is coming, that helps bridge the gap with that. So got frustrating, and we did some things to try to mitigate the effects of that. But it was overall, that's just something else to be aware of. My final screen here, that's me coaching at the Don Hudson Center. That's the Packers indoor facility. The Packers have been just a great well, obviously they're a great organization, but in terms of advocating for youth football,
Mm-hmm.
every year they host a parents clinic, and in this one I was I was teaching how to tackle, and that was funny. But I was actually the youngest guy there, so I was the one taking the bag to the ground. But that was a really good time working with some dads and moms whose kids were just playing for the first time and showing them what we do to make football as safe as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that the Packers do a really a good job of is they have a youth coaches clinic every year, and that was maybe as much as anything the inspiration for me really getting more involved with this. And
Mm-hmm.
it was the genesis of a lot of the YouTube videos I put up were just from position clinics that I saw really respected high school and college coaches do, and can't say enough about the job that organization does supporting youth football in our state. And below are the books I've done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a writer and editor by training, by trade. I love doing it, and I already had a lot. I realized at some point that I'd already written about half of these books just in emails to other coaches talking about it. So I might as well just put it on the page and try to make a book out of it. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you look left to right, the first one, 114 youth football plays. Those are pretty simple plays that we ran in my early years.
Mm-hmm.
And but if you've got nowhere else to start, that's a good place to start. The second one is more of an overall look at coaching. And if you're like I was 8 years ago, right? So you love sports, and your dad coached you, and you coached rec soccer, and you coached t-ball, and you coached all those other things, but not actual sports where you have practices and real games. Where do
Mm-hmm.
you need to go with this? And those are that book is kind of a compilation of my experiences over the years.
Mm-hmm.
The third one is read option offense, and I've been criticized for the title of that. It's kind of a zone read. That's the offense that we've run the last couple of years with great success, and that's quite a bit different than what you see in the 114 youth football plays. But
Right.
at number 28 there was just a fantastic quarterback for this year. Just did such a good job, and his older brother did the year before that in terms of the ball handling and the fakes, and then actually turning them into explosive plays. And then the last book on the right is not out yet, but it should be out within the next couple of weeks. It's 105 youth football drills, and
Okay.
that's a project that my sons and I worked on during these last 3 months during quarantine. On the right is Will, my older son. On the left is Charlie. And Will, I don't think I've seen him for more than 3 hours a week at home for the last 4 years because he's always doing basketball, football, baseball,
Mm-hmm.
and with those seasons canceled, he had nothing but time on his hands. So for a couple hours every night, we'd go in our backyard and we'd do football drills, and they'd take pictures or act out the drills. And like I said off air, we're putting together videos that will be out later in August. But what a fun time, and it's fun going back through the videos and to just see us goofing around and giving each other grief and talking trash to each other. That's been a really this hasn't been a really fun time for us overall, as a society, and I
Mm-hmm.
get that, but having the time to do that with the boys has been maybe the best thing to come out of it for my family. So, all right, so I've been talking for a while, man. So I'll take a breath. What else you got?
All good. All good. Um, well, I guess it's sort of one of the questions to follow up from that. What were some of the challenges that you had to face and overcome when implementing the no huddle offense? Because we know youth kids, their attention span is a lot less. How even high school kids and people in general, attention spans are dropping. How did you go about ensuring that they were focused enough to initially pick up the no huddle style offense?
Well, I'll tell you this: going no huddle and going fast helped with the attention span issues that you're talking about. You're
Mm.
absolutely right. I think that, and what we'd see at times, even after running it for a year or two, or getting well into the season, is that there were times, especially after the school year starts,
Mm-hmm.
that we'd run a play, and our center would just kind of walk over the ball, and the lineman would kind of walk, or not to pick on them, but any
Mm-hmm.
number of our players might just walk over. We had to get on them, like, go go go, you got to spot the ball, get lined up, right? It wasn't angry, right? It was just reinforcing that need to have that tempo. Again, if you put yourself in their shoes, right after Labor Day here in the states, is
Hmm.
we really cut down, but they're in school for 8 hours a day. Their minds are tired already, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, it's one thing to do in the summertime. We have longer practices; they don't have as much going on. But after school starts, I mean, their little brains are working working a lot. So honestly, going no huddle and eliminating the downtime between actions, and this goes
Hmm.
for individual drills or whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
that helps immensely, right?
Hmm.
Even then, we saw times when we really had to prod them and get them going and remind them to go at that speed. And I'm not going to say that they didn't do a good job of that, because most often they did, and they did just fine. But there were times when we really had to get on. So I would say that just that constant reminder to go fast,
Hmm.
and go fast without being sloppy. It's one thing to go fast and just look like garbage while you're out there. It's another to get your right line splits, and you've got to have a coach standing down the line of scrimmage to make sure that your linemen are lined up correctly and that they're
Hmm.
not like wedged out in a V, or that one of them isn't off sides, or whatever, because they'll get sloppy with their splits at times and things like that. But that's kind of those are kind of the prices you're willing to accept, the downside you're willing to accept if you're going to go at that pace, right? Like we
Hmm.
could go super slow and line up every one of those 11 kids every play, but we think that the benefits of going quicker and getting those additional reps outweigh
Hmm.
11 perfect.
Yeah.
And that's our philosophy. I mean, it could be, you could argue that a different way is better, and that would be perfectly valid, but that's just the way we chose to approach them. So you do sacrifice a little bit of that,
Hmm.
but man, at the end of the day, too, some of those kids are gonna, you could give them an hour to line up correctly, and it might not happen. So I
Yeah.
mean, you might as well just make the best of it and go, because
Yep.
the other 10 kids on offense and 11 kids on defense are getting something out of it.
Hmm. All right. So, final question. Name of the cast is fourth and goal. So you can sort of see where this is a scenario question. Um, it's fourth and goal. Uh, let's say we'll pretend we'll give you two situations. One, you're probably at that highest high school level and you can get a bit fancy with your play call, and then one, what would you call in the youth game as well? All right.
Sure. Give me more information, man. You got to,
Yeah.
like, are we losing? Where are
Yeah.
we at the game? Are we on the 9? Are we on the 1? Where are we at here?
Yeah, for sure. So state championship game, right? You're down by 4, so you need the touchdown. All right. You're on the 5 yard line, so you've got 5 yards to get. Left hash.
Um, I'd probably call grass, and grass means a lot of different things to a lot of different offenses, but ours means something similar to that, and that is basically we have our F, which is that sniffer, just run and get open, five yards downfield. I mean, it's like an option route, right? I mean,
Yep.
he's reading that second level defender and he's either squatting or running in a dig, or a short out or something like that, and he gets open, and that play worked well for us time and time again this year. I'd probably have, um, speaking of personnel, like my son shipped over to quarterback for that. We had a kid named Kors this year, who was a pretty big target for us, and another kid named Ryder. Yeah, going back to 11 months. That's probably the play I'd ran. That was a play we ran a lot on our conversions, basically.
Okay.
So that's a very similar scenario what you're talking about, and it was successful a lot. That said, in our championship game that we played this year, we ran that, and Charlie was quarterback, and he couldn't feel his hands because it was 30 degrees and sideways snow.
Yep.
In that scenario, we're left hash, right? I'd run uh, pickle, motion, tackle, read, right. So I'd start the slot on the left, pickle, send him in motion. We'd read the tackle and basically have the quarterback follow
Okay.
our right tackle, and he'd score. So because Jensen was really good at that this year, and we didn't honestly find ourselves in that situation that you described very often. I think maybe the one or two times we did, we failed. So I did not make the right call in those cases. But I appreciate the question after the fact.
No, that's okay. Well, thank you again for giving up your time. We definitely appreciate it, and it was very insightful in the no huddle aspect. It's something that we find a lot of teams try to implement. Some successfully, some not so successfully. So to get some insight into that and potentially another way that someone can learn it has been great. So definitely appreciate you giving up your time.
Yeah, if you can do it with 10 or 11-year-old kids, you can do it with other levels. It just kind of depends on how fast you want to go or how complicated you want to get. I mean, you could do really, really, really simple stuff if you want to go super fast. You obviously give up stuff if you do that, but if you really want to commit to it, anyone can do it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My information was on that last screen.
Yeah.
So always happy to talk.
Brilliant. Appreciate it. You guys heard it. If you want to speak to Coach about, whether it's the youth game, whether it's no huddle, whether it's about simplifying or just talking ball in general, his details are on the slide. They're also going to be down in the description below with links to everything. There'll be links to his books and everything like that. So you'll be able to go check all that out and really connect with Coach and talk to him and talk some ball.
All right.
Appreciate it.